Hi, I'm Rachel Abbasi. Welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. As always, thanks for spending time with me. Hello and happy Tuesday. I am still in my jammy jammers. I have not brushed my hair, but I tried to record yesterday and my internet went out, so it didn't work. Or I got like halfway through. And so I walked away. I was making pot pies yesterday. And then I came back. I'm like, let's just try it again. And so I recorded the whole episode and it did not capture the sound. So you can imagine my dismay, if you will. So then I was like, abort. I'm just not doing this today, apparently. So we're going to try again today. Hopefully it works. And today I wanted to talk about something that my sponsor shared with me on Sunday when we were talking about step 4. I went through my step 4 for the second time, and it was interesting to do that because the first time I went through it, I was looking at all of the stuff, the resentments and the like looking really at, it's not supposed to be where I failed, but looking at the trends that inhibit me from having strong relationships. And what I had found was very different than what I found this time. So I had recorded 4 episodes on step 4, and then on Sunday I talked to my sponsor about those, and our conversation went into resentments, and something she said to me was something I hadn't heard before. For so long in the program, I heard like, if you have a resentment or you're feeling agitated with someone, somebody's not meeting your expectations. Expectations are resentments under construction. I heard that. I heard if you're feeling resentful to pray for the other person. And so I've done that, and it's hard sometimes. It's challenging to shift your mindset from how irritated I am to everybody's sick in some way. I'm just going to pray for them. As a human, I pray for their health and their happiness and their peace. And it's always helped me to look at that person a little differently. And instead of being resentful, it's a form of forgiveness. But there's still this underlying, I forgive them for not meeting my expectations. I forgive them. I'm not accepting that they are who they are. I'm just forgiving them for it. So what my sponsor brought up was praising. It not only praying for someone, which removes that hostility and reminds me that we're all flawed and we're all sick in some way. It still has this like negative tone to it in my head now that I think about the shift to praising them. So praising someone, as she said, for me makes me think about it's moving from forgiving them for not meeting my expectations to accepting them for who they are. Like, I forgive you for not being what I wanted you to be is praying for them. And praising them is I accept you as who you are. And that's like a completely different level of surrender. I think praising removes the expectation altogether. Praising someone means you don't have to change for me. You're allowed to be yourself. Your personality, your strengths, your flaws, your limitations are all part of who God made you as a human being. And it accepts that this person's experiences made them who they are, and that is okay. Um, the resentment can be more, I think, more deeply removed if I'm actually finding a way to praise who they are. I think that we all have benefits in this society to an obvious extent, you know. But that psychology of a resentment, I think, is peeled apart a little more. Like I'm actually being able to walk through letting go. I think praising is like walking through letting go. I've talked so often about this God box that I have. And over the years, I've been able to have a mental God box instead of physically needing to write the person's name down on a piece of paper and stick it inside this box. Now I can mentally put that person's name in the God box. And that was the purpose of the God box, because when somebody would say to me, I was so hung up for so many years on when somebody would say, well, you just need to get over it. You just need to let it go. I'm like, but how? How do you do that? It's like that's not gonna remove my disappointment. That's not going to remove my irritation that they have failed in my eyes, you know? I'm continuing to argue. And that's why it takes, sometimes it'll take a week of me putting that person's name in this God box because I'm rehearsing handing it over. That's what it portrays for me is I'm trying to take it out of me and give it to God. That's what the God box is supposed to represent for me. But I still see that person. Like if I'm really dissecting what happens, I'm putting that failure in the God box and I'm saying, here, God, take this failure, this other person's character flaws and you know, handing, sorry, I'm letting Boris off of the chair that I'm sitting on, and then I got a cramp in my leg and I was about to scream. um, Putting it in the God box is like, take here the control that I am trying to have over this person's character, their personality, and trying to rewrite who they are. Here, God, I am acknowledging that that's not my job. It's your job. So here you take their flaws. But what it doesn't do is remind me that, you know, they're still a human being and they still have a lot of value that they offer to this world. And maybe I am blind to that value because there are parts of what they do that are not meeting my expectations. So praising somebody is going another step towards seeing the beauty in people, the beauty that I wouldn't normally even try to look at. And I think it's important. Um, I would say, before we dive too much into praising somebody, that there are situations, let's acknowledge there are situations where we're not going to praise somebody's harmful behavior or abusive tendencies. We're not denying harm done to us, and we're not ignoring our boundaries. So this is more aimed towards I'm at work and I had a lot of resentments at work. Can I just tell you that? Sorry for those of you I worked with. I had a lot. I probably didn't have a resentment towards you in particularly, of course, but I had some resentments, like because I had these expectations on a daily basis, all day long. I had have a control issue, and I work on allowing other people to be themselves. And so what I would do was I would go back into my office and I would be like, I pray for their health, their safety, and their happiness, you know? But I'm not acknowledging that they have good in them as well. So praising is acknowledging their humanity, acknowledging that we are all a part of a whole, the human race. And I accept that you are uniquely wired, just as I am uniquely wired. And I acknowledge that maybe I do things that irritate you. And so praising somebody is really an active form of stopping demanding people to operate according to my script. I am not the director of the play. And so step 4, we look at where where do I have expectations and where are they unrealistic? Where is my pride tied into that? Where is my fear? A lot of it is fear because I don't want somebody to show me up, right? Is that the right phrase? Like, I don't want people to be better than me. I have a fear of people being better than me. And that has very much dissipated now that I'm out. Well, you would think that I'm not working, um, but I see it arise in other ways. And I've talked recently about the cooking thing, like when my husband gives me recommendations for how I might be able to prepare a meal in either more delicious way or cook something a different way and it tastes better, or like this way makes the meat more tender or something like that. I, for quite some time, have felt like I'm not good enough when I get suggestions like, I should be able to figure that out on my own. It's my own self-talk that tells me if somebody gives me a suggestion, then I'm not as smart as I thought I was, right? And so this praise thing can dissolve ego. And I think that in the same way that we can praise other people, we can praise ourselves as well. But I think that would be a totally different episode. So applying this in real life, how do we praise difficult people? Um, I think that it takes a lot of practice, just like everything else that we talk about here. That's why this podcast, I think, can go on forever and ever, so many seasons, because we continue to learn new things about how we can live better. So when dealing with a difficult person, and I am so easy to figure out what their flaw is. And maybe it's not a flaw, maybe it's a strength, and I see it as a flaw because it doesn't meet my expectations. But how is that person uniquely gifted? Is what the thing is that's not meeting my expectations, is that actually adding value somewhere else for other people? Where is their role in the whole ecosystem of humanity? Where in their environment, where is that thing where they're not meeting my expectations? Where is it adding value in their environment? And that's interesting to think about, because when I think back to when I was working, and I think back to some of the folks that rubbed me the wrong way, I can immediately think of how those things that bothered me were assets in their lives. And it was my ego and my fear that was being upset. So this praise thing, I think, is genius, honestly. It seems very elementary, but I think it's genius. Um, and I I personally don't really have a lot of interactions with my family that turn into resentments. I just don't. I'm really lucky because of that, but I can imagine with family, we can start thinking like, why is this person not more like me? How did we grow up with the same parents and you turned out that way and I turned out this way? But try looking at it as, what is beautiful about how they are different from me? How did their, how did what makes them different add value to our family as we were growing up? I mean, I can see that easily with my brother and my sister. Um, what makes them different than me made our family so much stronger and better. So being able to sometimes just stop and tell that person that will help me let go of any kind of irritation at all. Being able to, like, when you're sitting in a room with somebody who might be eliciting some frustration, take a deep breath and authentically share value that they add to that room, you know? So with ourselves, then can I praise myself? Um, I have some of my frustrations with myself have been my nervous system is like, it's my anxiety is constantly on high. But, and I've for a long time felt very much like I'm weaker because of that. But I can see now in recovery how sharing about my experience, strength, and hope, that anxiety has helped me to become more empathetic to other people. It absolutely has. And that is a strength of mine. I've talked in episodes about how my over empathetic mind will sometimes get me stuck. It will elicit a bunch of fear, and that's when I start rolling back into like self-pity. And if I can stop and acknowledge, okay, this anxiety, it has benefits, and it's helping me relate to other people. My my personality is something that I get to live with. It doesn't have to look like someone else's. It doesn't have to meet someone else's expectations. And my personality is the exact personality that I want to live with on a daily basis. When I'm frolicking around this house and I'm doing all of my hobbies and stuff, I get to live with my personality, and it's been a tool for me. Yeah, I am constantly talking to myself. I'm talking to the dogs. Sometimes we're singing, we're making jokes, I like me. And it was a long time coming for me to get to this point where I like me and I enjoy me. And it really does take some self-praise. Some of you who have been lifetime listeners might recall my very first episode of me saying, I love me. And it felt so good to say that. So, and just to wrap it up, like, prayer is allows me to see the sickness in myself and in other people. But praise gets to see God's design. You know, prayer is like, God, please help them. And praise is, God, I see what you made. And it accepts everybody's unique role, and that everyone's temperament has value, and every human has something to offer the world. So this perspective, I think, will be helpful in dissolving that competitive nature that I have, dissolving that need to compare myself to other people, and the illusion that everybody else needs to be what I think they should be. And it was just super helpful. It was a very enlightening perspective. So I wanted to share that with you. Thanks for listening today. As always, I truly appreciate you clicking that play button. And please, like, share, and add a comment if this resonated with you. And that really inspires me to keep showing up for us. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you next time. With me.